Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. I hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. With more teams bowing out to the World Championship, there's now only 2 spots remaining up for grabs here in the CDL for the World Championship. 3 teams fighting over those spots after a decent performance from OpTic yesterday. Crimsix and Clayster giving them a fair bit of credit, but their run's only going to get harder. Can they continue it later on today? Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. Videos to the channel. Thank you very much indeed for doing that one. Plenty to discuss today. As Octane says though, this event so far has been honestly great to watch from home. Like, if there were a few less game vibes, that would be appreciated as a European fan. And even as Afro says, convince me this isn't scripted though, right? All the game vibes just unbelievable. Like, yeah, the percentage of that actually happening. I think someone did the analysis, right, of just running in a kind of a simulation of having something like 15 out of the last 17 series go to game 5s. If it was effectively a 50-50 situation on each individual map, it would be less than a 1% chance that that happens, like significantly less than a 1% chance that happens. So, like, I guess Vanguard is just built different. But yeah, this one, it was 15 out of 17. Like, look at all these series. This obviously from like yesterday or from the day before yesterday. But the story continued, right? I was looking at kind of the mid-match, right, when they do the kind of highlights on the screen and they have on the left-hand side the results so far today. And I was like 3-2, 3-2, 3-2. And I was 2-2 again. I was like, I couldn't believe what I was seeing, honestly, at times. I feel like finally the curse is going to get broken, but hopefully the rest of the event delivers, right? Hopefully we get to Sunday with a banger grand finals as well, so it doesn't just kind of peter out into massive 3-0s. Like, you know, I'd imagine this trend is probably going to continue, knowing the way this game tends to play and honestly how closely a lot of these teams are matched up. Now, as aBeZy says, GG's Paris 1-3-2 earlier in the day. Now, of course, they played last match of the day, so this has been a key talking point actually for some of the pros. Frustrations here from the FaZe guys that they play first and then last on the day. They have so much time to wait, especially because a lot of those other teams are going to play their match and get off for the day, not do any further scrims or whatever. So FaZe don't really have that many teams to warm up against. They can warm up some teams for their matches, but especially when they're all 3-2s, FaZe had to wait for ages to play their final game of the day, right? First and last again. They never learn, says Clay. Honestly, mind-blowing at this point. I believe even Maven replied to this to say, like, he was kind of frustrated himself because I think they were casting first and last. Ended up deleting that one. They're rather interesting because, of course, maybe he's not always been in the good books with the CDL the last year or so, as far as we've heard. And even Rated says, all I can think of is how horrible I feel for FaZe. First and last game of the day, every single series going the distance. And even Formal kind of says, imagine doing it at every event, which seems to be what the OpTic guys often have to deal with as well. Which, well, we'll see if that is the case today, which is pretty much the case today, actually. If they win their first series, we'll see the schedule here in a second. Let's talk LAG versus FaZe. This is a massive series for so many teams because if LAG won this, they went to 1-6-5. That would have overtaken Florida Mutineers. They needed to win this to have a chance to get to the World Championship. If LAG won this series, as they did online very recently, New York would have to win the event if they want to qualify. But thankfully, if you're a New York fan, FaZe actually came good in this series. A pretty dominant one on the whole, right? I was thinking there's no way another series goes game 5 here. Game 1 was pretty comfortable on the Bacage, 250-214. Like, I mean, yeah, we talked about Slasher, right, in terms of critical series turning up. I think he still played all things considered rather well in this series, but I mean, recently we saw the likes of Huke, the likes of Slasher really turning a corner in these big series. Wasn't really the case in this particular one, right? You can't really expect that from your players always because obviously, like, they do just get outclassed on a skill perspective here. And yeah, Los Angeles Guerrillas, after winning Major 2 and picking up 65 points for it, they fall in the Search and Destroy as well, 6-3. This is a map that they were rather good on, of course, earlier on this season. They beat FaZe on it to win the Major right back at Major 2, but that, of course, doesn't happen this time around. And then the control was dominant in FaZe's favour, 3-0 to close out a pretty dominant series. Arcitys turn up as well here because, of course, he had a pretty rough time on the Thursday, sorry. On Friday, he turns up being in these couple of series, keeps FaZe moving on to the tourney, and actually that locks in the first seed for the World Championship for Atlanta FaZe. So regardless of what happens now, FaZe will be number 1, OpTic will be number 2. That is locked, which means that FaZe in the very first round of the World Championship would either play, as it currently stands, the Florida Mutineers, or potentially the New York Subliners, which is still a possibility as it stands right now. But yeah, Los Angeles Guerrillas eliminated from Major 4 and for the season. Crazy scenes. They came 12th in Major 1, 1st in Major 2, 12th Major 3, 8th Major 4. That's their season done. Like, look, I think that there's an argument to be made that if you win an event, I don't think you should auto-qualify, because if you auto-qualify after winning an event, then it basically just makes the rest of your season irrelevant. And they can just take the mick in a lot of their online matches if they don't matter so much. But I do think there may be more points for the major victories, right? The fact that it's 10 points per online victory and you only get 65 for the major, they've probably got to bump these numbers up for what you get on LAN in future seasons. But just, if anything, they should have been better, right? I feel like the organisation in general made some pretty questionable decisions here. Gunless being in, then he was gone again. Asim being gone for Neptune. Like, I just think in general, this team, obviously, look, they won Major 2. That was a massive fluke on their perspective. But when this team was formed at the start of the year with Gunless and Huke, Asim and Slasher, like, it was theorized that this team could be a serious contender. They became a contender at one point when Spart came into the squads. They looked pretty good for like one weekend online. Then they went went into the major and obviously won the entire thing with the Vulcan play, but since then they've fallen off a cliff. So I do wonder what's going to happen really with this organization in general. What are they? Because like Thieves were in a similar boat. If Thieves, like obviously they're looking pretty good right now, they could make a serious run. But let's say Thieves don't, like they're in a similar boat where again they've made a team and the kind of structure behind the organization hasn't really worked out. Like they're going to have to consider a big blow up really, because like LA Guerrillas as an organization has a lot of resources to still get very similar results, right? The last 3 years they've always been right to the bottom of the league regardless of what happens during the season. Yes, they've won an event, but I'm sure that's not what they're looking for. And many people blaming, of course, the decision to get rid of Asim. Dropping this guy, of course, was pretty interesting at the time, right? Keeping Huke on the team instead, the Neptune pickup, which didn't work initially. He looked rather better as time progressed, but still wasn't enough against FaZe. They just got outskilled on the day. But after the results last night, that's Minnesota Rokkr and Los Angeles Guerrillas out of the World Championship. Slasher understandably devastated, right? I feel bad for him as I did for Attach, really, because I feel like he's another player that had this crazy streak of going to the World Championships. Not the case this year. And I think it's really difficult to call what Minnesota and what Los Angeles Guerrillas do next season. Like, do they spend some time actually building out the staff behind the team, general management, coaching staff, whatever, before they choose a roster? Because maybe at some point in normal sports, it would be considered that the organization behind the team would be at fault rather than the team itself, which I think obviously is kind of partly culpable on both ends. But we might be getting to that point in Call of Duty Esports where players and general managers and coaches start paying the price for these teams that are bad decisions, let's say, over the course of a season, rather than necessarily just the players themselves. Thought it was an interesting one to mention real quick, but that does mean with those 2 teams out that 6 teams have officially qualified. FaZe, OpTic, they're locked to number 1, number 2. Ravens, Surge, Ultra, Breach. Things can still go either way with these teams. But there's 2 qualification spots left and 3 teams still to fight over them. Thieves, Florida Mutineers, and of course the New York Subliners themselves. Even though Kismet says FaZe up because they needed FaZe to win that series and knock out Los Angeles Guerrillas right then and there. RC says, told Fraud I didn't get him the first time. Gotta make it right, man, because of course failing to turn up as they did in their first series up against Los Angeles Thieves, that arguably kind of hurt New York as well. And even that decision to bench Gunless right earlier on the season, like, okay, maybe individually he wasn't so great when he made the return into the starting lineup, but still, Gunless on the team, they had Asim on the team, and they end up forming a roster which doesn't make the World Championship. Yes, they got close. They honestly did somewhat better than I thought they would with the quality of this squad, I thought, in the last few weeks. But I don't know what's going to happen here. I hope Gunless and Asim get back in the league next year, but I imagine it's going to be on a different organization depending on what they decide to do. Final series stats, Arcitys turned up, Cellium, Simp, of course, doing the usual thing. Spart got kind of ultra-fried in this one, to be honest, but aBeZy with another .8. It is interesting. If FaZe somehow battle back to the grand finals, will aBeZy drop a .8 in the grand finals again, or will he not try it? Because he's kind of been a tendency to do this so far, but Arcitys turned up, so they obviously make amends for that one. And Clayster is understandably looking at a load of these teams right now, the Minnesota Rokkr, Los Angeles Guerrillas out of the World Championship, and saying, well, look, so many teams getting knocked out already. I'm an unrestricted free agent next year. Bangeth my line, he says, right? So I think Minnesota especially could be a reasonable target here. There are some other options as well that might come available, because who knows what happens to Seattle at the World Championship, Boston at the World Championship. Like, I think Clayster could have some options out there, but Minnesota would be an interesting one. I feel like they would maybe do well to build around Clayster, but got to give him the reins to some degree in which SMG players he actually wants to play with, and try and get some better talent on the team in terms of SMGs, because wasn't really the case this year, to be honest. Also, Los Angeles Guerrillas maybe, but depends what Slash is thinking there, because as the king of LA or whatever, I'm sure he wants to stay on an LA organization. Whether they're going to do what he wants to do with the roster, that's another question entirely, right? So Clay's trying to get opportunities. That's my last Doug tweet for the year, he says, but I imagine there's potentially going to be more to come. He's already seeking opportunities, and I wouldn't be surprised if Clay and Attach are kind of having words over the next few weeks to figure out what could be going on over there. But of course, Attach, I believe, is also a free agent now for the Minnesota Rokkr, with his contract probably being up. So if he wants to leave, he probably can and just go elsewhere if he would like to. Let's talk the OpTic series real quick. Of course, last night they managed to take down Minnesota Rokkr Game 5 to eliminate them from the World Championship. Good result for OpTic, of course. Was not clean at all. The control certainly going to need to improve today. On 3-2, go again tomorrow against Boston, right? But I do think Boston is definitely a winnable matchup for OpTic, especially the way the teams match up. Probably going to get a Gavutu harp one in there, right? Depending if Boston want to play it, which they might not do, right? But if they do, then I think OpTic are favored on that one, and then probably it goes to a Bacage again, where I'm not really sure OpTic really want to be facing Vivid and Nero on Bacage, but they'll probably square up with them on it anyway, because OpTic seem to just love playing that map right now, and that works if Shotzzy turns up on the main stage, right? It hasn't really been the case so far this tournament. Now, even Dashi was kind of giving some credit to the room itself, because we kind of talked about the fact that the Thieves guys were not so happy that the rooms, the kind of practice rooms, warm-up rooms behind the scenes are pretty well stacked with players. They're relatively small. Apparently, the virus might be helping them out there, but Crimsix was giving them some credit, right? Well, I mean, look at this right here. The security guard on the door. Woohoo, go OpTic. As head of security, I made sure their warm-up wasn't compromised by a legion of fans. Thank you, OpTic Gaming, right? So yes, OpTic helped keep New York in the tournament. Kind of crazy how OpTic for now and also FaZe are keeping Crimsix alive. After so many results for those two teams the last couple of weeks, went against New York, finally they're coming good and helping New York out a little bit. But certainly New York still have a lot of this in their own hands. Clay was giving some credit though to the plays that Shotzzy and Illy were making. Of course, world champions alongside Clayster on the Dallas Empire team with Crimsix, of course, and Huke back in the Modern Warfare days. But I'm talking about mid-play micro decisions, right? I certainly think their Search and Destroy has been a really strong point. The fact that they were able to beat Minnesota in 2 Search and Destroys in that series was impressive. Like, why Ant and India are so good. Once you make them unreadable and play with purpose, it becomes impossible to stop. Ends up being a coin flip decisions on the other side to try and slow it down. But yeah, talking about the micro decisions that Shotzzy and Illy were making in that game 5 to help them get over the line. But I mean, yeah, I think you're going to need to see more from Shotzzy today if they want to continue to make this run. This is the way the CDL points currently stand. So this is including all of the points currently. So Los Angeles Guerrillas 155, Minnesota 140. They're out of it alongside Legion. One more team will fail to make it. I kind of hope it's Mutineers because they're definitely the worst team of the 9 remaining with a chance. But New York have to prove that in their match later today. So New York right now are 30 points behind the 160 that Florida Mutineers have. But if New York comes second this tournament, they get to 160. They'll get 30 more points or 50 from the tournament on the whole. If Subliners make the grand finals, they'll move up to 160. They really need Mutineers to get double bopped out of the tournament effectively. Subliners play Mutineers today. If New York beat Florida, drop them down to losers, Florida then are at 160 still. New York at that point will get up to 150, but still they'll need one more series win to get to the grand finals at that point, either against Thieves or Ultra in the upper side if they were to beat Florida Mutineers today. And then Mutineers drop down to losers to play, I believe, FaZe. So Mutineers would play FaZe if they lose, at which point you'd think the FaZe have got to be the favourites in that situation, right, to maybe do Crimsix another favour. So there's a very reasonable possibility here that if New York manage to beat Florida, then Florida will get beaten by FaZe, at which point both teams could be at 160 if New York make the grand finals. And if they do make the grand finals, because if they beat Florida Mutineers today, they should hold, I believe, the head-to-head over Florida if they beat them today. Therefore, New York realistically only need Mutineers to get double-rounded now and go out of the tournament top 6, get grand finals, and New York make the world championship. There is also a world in which if Thieves don't win any series from here on out in the tournament, and they will go out of the tournament as it happened if they lose, I suppose it would be to Toronto today and then to either OpTic or Boston, then New York, by winning the tournament, would actually qualify regardless, even if Mutineers, whatever happens to the Mutineers, right? Because, of course, if New York somehow won, they would get to 175. That's still a possibility. Like, it's craziness that's going on right now, but this is the way the bracket works out with absolutely critical games. But you've got to say that New York definitely have a reasonable possibility of making it happen here, but grand finals will still be necessary even if they do take down Mutineers. These are the games of the day. OpTic Breach, tough one to call, honestly. I feel like these two teams match up in a rather interesting way. I do kind of want to favour OpTic here just because I feel like eventually they've got to win a control, and Boston is a team that I feel like they can do that against. If they do, I think they should be okay. And their Search and Destroy makes me confident that OpTic still can sneak out a game 5 if they have to. Ultra Thieves, I think, is really difficult to say. I honestly kind of believe in the Thieves run at this point. I feel like Ultra is still a little bit suspect. They might well do it in a game 5, but if it goes game 5, I'd give Ultra like a 60% edge. But I think on the whole, given the respawn of Thieves right now, like, they're honestly come with some fire. Now, whether they just fall off a cliff again, they played phenomenally against FaZe. Whether they can keep that up, I'm not really sure they can, but if they still play to like 80-90% of that level, they should beat Ultra. Then Subliners Mutineers, right? If this goes game 5, like, I don't know how to call it, but Mutineers shouldn't be good enough in the respawns. And New York with the home crowd behind them, I'm going to take Subliners here 3-1. And then, of course, like, I'm not going to predict the rest of these matches because I'll probably get some of these earlier ones wrong knowing the way this tournament goes. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, hit on the like button. Tell us the YouTube gods, that's a good video. I'd just like you should see it as well. And I've grown the competitive Call of Duty community. Thank you as always. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.